Hello everybody! Today we are going to talk about my TBR for the Reading Rush. The Reading Rush is a readathon which I'm sure by now you have heard from lots of people, is formerly known as Booktubeathon, and it happens every year in the summer. This year it's happening from July 22nd through the 28th. I've been doing it for a few years now, always really enjoy this readathon, so we're back. These are the books that I am hoping to read during the Reading Rush 2019. So there are, of course, challenges for this readathon, but a lot of my books could satisfy multiple challenges. So I think I'm just gonna go over my TBR and then we'll talk about how everything fits into the challenges after I do that. There used to be a challenge every year to read 7 books, and they are not doing the 7-book challenge this year, but Ariel did say that there's going to be a badge on the Reading Rush website. So if you do read 7 books, you get like a special badge on your profile. So I'm definitely going for the 7 books, and I've always tried to do the 7 books in the past, so just feels right. And that does remind me as well that if you have a profile on the Reading Rush website, you should befriend me. I'll put my profile in the description box. You can add me. I'm not totally sure what all that is going to entail right now, but I'm definitely am excited to be picking up badges. The website, to me at least right now, reminds me a lot of the NaNoWriMo website. It's giving me nano vibes, which is always fun. Okay, so let's actually get into the TBR now. So the first book on my TBR is Midsummers Mayhem by Rajani Laraka, and this is a middle grade book. So middle grade's always good for readathons because you get through them a little bit more quickly. This has a lot of stuff that I'm interested in. It is a retelling of A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare, so that's super exciting. It's all about baking, and I think the main character joins a baking competition, and we have an Own Voices story about an Indian family, so there's just tons of stuff about this that I'm really excited for. I think it's kind of like a contemporary setting with a magical twist to it, and it just looks so cute, so fun. I love Shakespeare retelling, so everything about this just looks really, really cute, and I'm very excited to read it. Next on my TBR, we have another middle grade, just because I'm feeling the middle grade right now, and it works really well for readathons, and it is Dragon Pearl by Yoon Ha Lee. This is part of Rick Riordan's imprint. He has Rick Riordan Presents, and I really have been wanting to pick up books through his publishing endeavor. So this is described as a space opera, which just intrigues me. I don't think I've ever really read a space opera before, and the main character is a fox spirit. Again, I think this is an Own Voices book, and it's taking some inspiration from Korean folklore and mythology. It's just taking those elements and turning it into a sci-fi story, which I think sounds really cool. So it's kind of like a blend of fantasy and sci-fi, which are two genres that can be a little bit difficult for me to get into, but I think because it's middle grade, it'll be a little bit more accessible for me. This is one that just really excites me as well. So I'm very curious to see how this one goes. Next on my TBR is The Lost Coast by Amy Rose Capetta. Amy Rose Capetta is an author I have been wanting to read for a very long time, and I just haven't picked up a book of hers yet. I'm just really hoping that she's an author that I love because I want to dive into her backlog of books really badly. But The Lost Coast is about this girl who stumbles upon a witch coven group sort of thing, and all of them are queer, and she just kind of opens herself up to this new world. This sounds awesome. I don't really need to know much more about it. I need to read this book. And despite the fact that this maybe is fantasy, I don't really know exactly how fantastical the witchy elements of this book are. It just feels to me like it's going to kind of read like a YA contemporary, so that's very up my alley. So I'm feeling very comfortable with this one as well. The next book on my list is The Chocolate War by Robert Cormier. I think this is maybe middle grade or YA. It's one of the earlier YA novels. This takes place at an all-boys prep school. I think it dives into a lot of corruption at this school, and I'm pretty sure that this is kind of a controversial book. It's been banned a lot of times. I'm curious to see what all goes down in this book. It's a pretty short book, so I think it'll be a quick read, but definitely pack a punch. I don't know a lot about it, but we'll see how it goes. I could see myself maybe being turned off by this book if it has like a lot of male characters that are just absolutely awful people, which I think it kind of might. So I'm hoping it'll go well despite that element, but we shall see. Next up, we have a poetry collection and a graphic novel, just because I feel like those are kind of nice things to include during a week-long readathon to switch things up. And I have gone for possibly the quickest and easiest options of those two categories from my bookshelves, because I just want to make sure that I get everything read. So we have Hourglass Studies by Krysia Jopek. This is a very short poetry collection. I can't really tell you what it's really about just because it's a poetry collection, so who really knows? But all the poems seem to be in list format, which is interesting, and it's very short, so I should be able to read it really quickly. Because I definitely have fallen in the trap of choosing to read poetry during readathons in the past and realizing that poetry is something that I like to take my time with, so it seems like it's gonna go by really quickly, but then it doesn't. So I'm choosing something really short, so it can't take too long for me to get through. And then the graphic novel, I don't really know if you would call this a graphic novel exactly, that I've chosen is The Cat's Gallery of Western Art by Susan Herbert. This isn't exactly like a graphic novel, but it's an art book, and it just has famous art, and it's been repainted so that all the people are cats. There's nothing really for me to read here, but I am gonna flip through it and look at every single piece of art, and I'm gonna say that that counts as reading a book, because this is a book, and I'm gonna look at all the pages. It's such a funny concept. I'm just excited to look at it and see all the paintings. If it were dogs, it would be better, but I think this will still be good. And then for my last choice, I want to read a Stephen King book, and I haven't decided. I have two options. I'm maybe gonna start both of them and see which one grabs my attention. Maybe I'll try to read both if I have time, but they are 1922 and Carrie. So Carrie is maybe the more famous one here. This is about a girl who is bullied at school, but there is a paranormal twist and things go down. I haven't read this before. There are a couple film adaptations. I've never seen any of them, but it's a story that I'm really familiar with just because it's so famous. And then 1922 is a novella where this guy is, I think, selling his property and a bunch of people get murdered. I'm not really sure. But yeah, those are the books that I'm going to be reading for the Reading Rush. Let's talk about the challenges now and how they're all gonna fit together. So the first challenge is to read a book with purple on the cover. My official choice for this is definitely Midsummers Mayhem, just because this is a very purple cover, but I do think that there is some purple on The Lost Coast as well as Dragon Pearl. The next challenge is to read a book in the same spot the entire time. This really could be anything. My guess is it's probably going to be one of these two books just because they're shorter and they're physical books that I'm gonna like sit down with and read. Probably just gonna sit at my couch and read them, but maybe I'll be feeling adventurous and I'll go to like a local coffee shop and read a book there. We'll see. The third challenge is to read a book that you meant to read last year. For this one, I've decided to go with a book that was on my TBR from last year for my Project Decades. Project Decades was a big project that I did last year where I read older books, and I had a huge TBR of possible books that I wanted to read during that. The Chocolate War by Robert Cormier was on there, so this is my most solid choice for this. But I also had mentioned in that video that I was really hoping to read a Stephen King novel last year because I've never read him before. So that's also an option for this, is one of the two Stephen King books that I have on my TBR. I definitely meant to read Stephen King last year. The next challenge is to read an author's first book. Midsummers Mayhem is, I believe, a debut novel, so that one also works for this challenge. And then Carrie by Stephen King is actually Stephen King's first novel. So I keep going back and forth with if I want to read 1922 or Carrie, just because they kind of covered slightly different challenges. We'll get to that in a minute, but Carrie could potentially be an author's first book. But if not, Midsummers Mayhem, I believe, will work for that challenge as well. The next challenge is to read a book with a non-human main character. So Dragon Pearl by Yoon-Ha Lee works for this challenge because the main character is a fox spirit. Also, technically, this book would work for that as well because all the characters in this are cats. So there you go. The sixth challenge is to pick a book that has 5 or more words in the title. So I do think that I just have one book for this, which is The Cat's Gallery of Western Art. So The Cat's Gallery of Western Art has 6 words in the title. And then the last challenge is to read a book and watch the movie adaptation. So for this one, I have a few options as well. I believe that The Chocolate War was turned into a movie, so I could potentially watch that. But really, I would like to do one of my Stephen King novels for this. And this is where I can't decide between Carrie and 1922 because there was a Netflix adaptation of 1922 that came out pretty recently that, to me, looks a little bit better than any of the Carrie movies. So that's why I'm kind of leaning toward 1922 because that movie just looks more fun to watch. But I also am kind of partial to reading Carrie because it's his first book. It qualifies for that challenge, reading a debut book. And also just because I feel like it would be really nice to just start out with his first book and kind of move on from there as my first Stephen King novel. So I don't know. I just can't decide. I guess I'll just see what happens. But regardless, I'm probably either going to be watching Carrie or 1922 on Netflix. And then, of course, the bonus challenge of reading 7 books. So I believe I have 7 books. So I have The Cat's Gallery of Western Art, Hourglass Studies by Krysia Jopek, Midsummers Mayhem by Rajani LaRocca, The Lost Coast by Amy Rose Capetta, Dragon Pearl by Yoon-Ha Lee, The Chocolate War by Robert Cormier. So that's 6, and then 1 Stephen King novel, either Carrie or 1922, or both, and I'll read 8 books. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that's about it. Those are the books that I'm hoping to read for the Reading Rush this year. I'm really excited to see how it goes. I do plan to vlog the readathon, so stay tuned for that. And you can see all my thoughts on these books. I'm guessing that there are going to be daily video challenges that I am not sure if I want to participate in or not, but we shall see. If not, I will see you guys soon. I promise. I have videos in the works. You will be seeing a lot of me for the rest of the summer. So take care. I will be back soon. I really hope you participate in this readathon as well. Let me know what you're reading and add me as a friend on the Reading Rush website. I will see you guys soon.